finished Seminar F on doing business in Africa. And during this session, what we tried to do was look at some of the pertinent issues facing taxpayers and tax administrations regarding doing of business in Africa. And we looked at 3 such issues: transfer pricing, VAT, and withholding taxes. And apart from looking at it from the perspective of taxpayers and tax administrations, we also looked at things happening broadly from a multilateral perspective, for example, developments at the OECD and at the UN. And our speakers were drawn from tax practice, industry, the tax administration, regional organization, for example, ATAF, but also the United Nations as well. And basically, what we were trying to do with this session was, of course, these issues have relevance not just in Africa, but we try to zero in on those areas that are particularly pertinent in the African context. So if I look at transfer pricing, for example, we looked at the main pain points faced by taxpayers and tax administrations. From the perspective of taxpayers, of course, things like heightened audit fatigue. And from the perspective of both sides, issues with documentation, complexity, and uncertainty. But apart from just laying the issues on the table, we also addressed how do we resolve this going forward. Regarding VAT, we first took a look at the importance of VAT in Africa. And for example, when you look at total tax revenues in Africa, and you see the high percentage of VAT as compared to other tax revenues, or when you look at the percentage with regard to GDP. So we see that VAT is increasingly becoming even more important, especially since the pandemic, when we've seen the boom in supply of cross-border digital services. So we zeroed in on that, cross-border digital services, and looked at some of the issues that are arising as a result of these. And these include things like problems regarding the scope of this supply, mode of the supply, registration issues, B2B versus B2C, and how they particularly affect African businesses and tax administration, and also looked at possibilities for improvement where we saw serious concerns. And then relating to WHT, withholding taxes, we've looked at how attractive these are as a policy preference for African governments, mainly because of the relative simplicity in administering these type of taxes. And of course, withholding taxes, normally you would see them for passive income, but we also addressed the trend we see towards African governments applying withholding taxes to active income as well. And that meant that we had to look at the issues that this is causing, not just for taxpayers, but also for tax administration. So issues such as nexus before you levy the withholding tax, potential conflict with a double tax agreement, and a whole haul of recent controversies, case law, that have dealt with this particular issue. But of course, we also looked beyond Africa to look at developments, for example, at the UN, Article 12A, Article 12B, Article XX, which is just coming up the horizon, and not just, again, looking at the issues, but also proffering suggestions for reform where we found these to be relevant.